Hello and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to speak with everyday superheroes helping nonprofits. Joining me today is Rachel Bearbrower to talk about systems and getting more of your time back. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Oh, Alex, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So I'm curious to know, what is your superhero origin story? That is to say, how did you get started working with nonprofits?
Oh, man. Well, I think every superhero falls into it by accident. And that's exactly what I did. I really, truly, it all happened by accident. And it started by founding a nonprofit. I was young and, was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I, was planning on being a financial advisor, maybe a senator. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to start a nonprofit. Can't be that hard. And spent 7 years running my organization. I founded it, built it up. Then I was tired, real burned out. And I decided to leave my role as executive director and teach what I know, which is how to help small shop executive directors create better systems for better stewardship and better retention.
Awesome. How long has that been now?
Oh gosh, 5.5 years, I think.
Mm.
Just over almost 5.5 years. Yeah.
Awesome. So there was a few items we could talk about because we have a few common passions, and definitely systems is one of them. So we decided that systems would be a good place to start, and maybe some habits to go with those systems. So I was curious to know this, to making sure people understand the definition of a system, because a system could mean a technology and it could mean a process. So when you talk about, for example, the idea of reclaiming your time and using systems to help you reclaim that time, what do you normally refer to when you mention systems?
Yeah. There are so many ways that you can define a system, but the definition that I have come up with and that I really work from is that a system is a tool or technology combined with routines and habits that help you move toward a desired outcome. So someone listening right now might be like, cool, I've got all the apps and I've got all the technology and the systems to keep me organized, and I am still a hot mess. So I think it's important to think of systems as a combination of all of those different things, the tech, the routines and the habits, and think of it as a tool.
Because without a process, the things will just stand on the shelf, so to speak, right? So yes, it might automate a few things for you, but if you don't have a way to make sure you're actually doing what you need to do, it doesn't really help. So if I understand correctly, it's a tool or process, or an process. I missed that word between the two.
So a tool or technology combined with routines and habits that help you move toward a desired outcome.
Okay. And so you mentioned you have a workshop on this, and you mentioned it in your own podcast as well, how there are 4 basic systems to help you. Is it specifically for time management, or is it just overall systems to help you with your operations?
So I think that it kind of it's all part of a bigger picture, right? Like, you need systems, and when you have systems, you can better utilize your time, and it kind of all comes back to, well, you want to better use your time. You also want to be more effective and more efficient with, the tools and the tech that you have available. And so the reason you're doing all of that is likely to be able to raise more money, to build better relationships with your donors, and to also have space in your life where you can do, you have a balance where you aren't always feeling overwhelmed and you have an endless to-do list, and you can make time for the things that you love and that bring you joy.
So these are the benefits of the systems, right? Is making sure that it creates the space for you so that you can focus on the things you need to focus on, and have the systems take care of the mundane stuff, or the routine stuff, or the stuff that's more error prone that you can automate. And then the process supports that to make sure that you're actually using the systems and using them efficiently, so that your gain is maximized again, to be able to focus on the things that you need to focus on or that you want to focus on. That kind of summarizes it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So then what are the four basic systems that you advocate for?
Yeah. I kind of want to step back just for 1 second. And, you know, in our nonprofit sector, we have this legacy of work and overwork and being underpaid and undervalued. And burnout in the sector is an epidemic. And I think that we as a nonprofit sector are often held to just these unrealistic expectations and outdated metrics of what can actually be accomplished. And I think so many organizations that are looking to build systems in their organization are doing so that they have more time. That's what people are looking for, to have more time, to better manage their time, to better use their time. And I think that it's important to, like, I teach a lot of system building and productivity, and to remind yourself that not only are you doing this to like better use your time and be more efficient, but to actually be able to do less, right? Like that's the power of automations. That's the power of systems, is like you are just being more effective so that when you figure out a system and it's working for you, it's not so that you can add more to your plate. It's so that you can actually do less, which is something that I think terrifies people, but that's also how I have come to create these basic systems and really help nonprofits kind of manage their time. So
that's a really interesting point, to do less, because typically, and this is what I think that was promised to us many years ago, is that computers would help our lives, simplify our lives, give us more free time. And yet I think the trend has been the opposite, right? The more work you can do, the more work you get. And that the systems and the technologies that support them are actually are making us work even more. And you mentioned that earlier, of just, it's a churn now, where it's how fast can you churn things out? How fast can you do things? And it's not giving us the break we're supposed to. It's not allowing us to take our foot off the gas pedal, so to speak. So this do less mantra, I love it. But do you think people can actually do it, or they say, "Oh, now I get an extra few minutes to do something. Let's do extra newsletter, an extra outreach, an extra whatever." Like, how do you refrain, or how do you teach people, or let them know that it's okay to do less?
well, I mean, it is extremely hard, and it is something that is just ingrained in it's ingrained in the expectation, not just in nonprofits, but I mean everywhere. Henry Ford created the assembly line, so that the assembly line and the 40-hour work week, based on nothing more than like, I need to get more done, and it's going to take me 40 hours to get everything that I need done, not based on like how we work as humans, or what are the things that we need. It was all based on greater production. And so a great example of this is, okay, so I'm a farmer. Not a lot. Well, I talk about it a lot, but I live on a farm, and we farm several hundred acres. But if we rewind for a second and we think about the farming practice in general, there are seasons, right? So like, we're in winter right now. We're not doing anything. I mean, we're like, doing maintenance on tractors and stuff like that. But when spring hits, that's when planting starts. That's when we start to see, we put the seeds in the ground and things start to grow. We add the fertilizer. We head into summer, where the sun is out, things really start to grow and bloom. And then we move into fall, where it's harvest time. And we then, once, the crop is harvest, we move into winter, and we just have this ongoing seasonal cycle. Okay. So 100 years ago, farmers used to produce the amount of food and the amount of crop that they needed to serve their local community. Okay. So just the people within however big their radius is, that's the amount of food that they created, just enough to be able to provide and survive and possibly even thrive. And then there became this shift where we had to start mass producing the crops so that, apples are grown in Washington and shipped all over. We grow corn and soybeans, which are shipped all over the world. And it's incredible what has been able to be accomplished, but it's also there's a lot of consequences because of that. And I think that when we're thinking about our time and we're thinking about our systems, taking a step back and looking at like, why am I creating this system? What is it like? Am I trying to like mass produce like this, an organization? Am I trying to serve like the entire world, or am I trying to help the people within my community and staying small and doing what I need to thrive within my community? How can I do that?
I love it. I think it's we get so caught up in the wheel, the rat race, and the wheel of productivity that we don't take a moment to enjoy ourselves and to remember why we got into doing it in the first place. So I think it's awesome that you live on a farm too. I didn't know that. That's really cool.
It's true. I've been a big learning curve, but great metaphors for all of this system talk. So,
shall we jump into the 4 systems then?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So there are 4 basic systems and I recommend this really for your own personal systems as well as kind of as an organization. So whether you are a 100-person organization or you are a 1-person small shop. So there are 4 systems that every leader needs. Number 1 is schedule management. Number 2 is project management. Number 3, operations management. And number 4, executive management. Now, you might have inside of your organizations or inside of your life, for example, on the farm, I've got a meal prep system and we have a tractor maintenance system. And if you're an animal rescue, you might have a dog walking system or a food log system. And each org will be different. So that's totally okay to have additional systems. But there are the 4 basic ones for the organizations are the ones that I just managed. So I can start digging into them, giving a little more context about what each one is. All right. So first up, we have schedule management. So organizations use this for things that are time specific, like meetings and appointments. For schedule management, you might use a tech platform or software like Calendly that to help you schedule those appointments. Then next up, you've got project management. And so this is for the big picture stuff. This is used for organizing your goals and planning. And it has it's a little bit more flexible in timing. So some of the tech and software that you might use is like Notion or Asana, even a Google Sheet. So then you have operations management, and this organizes your data and your tech and kind of the external stuff. And you're really focused on organizing your information and simplifying. Okay, so with those 3 systems, so we've got schedule, project, and operations. Each of those are considered a digital or technology-based system, meaning they are helped by technology. All right, here's where things get good. The last system is executive management. And so this is actually an analog system, and it helps your brain focus and take action. And the fun part is that this system is actually, it's usually hindered by technology because our executive function is actually a very, very human process. So it's hard to fully replace it by technology. And actually what a lot of what I teach is helping leaders and organizations find the synergy between their digital and analog systems.
All right, let's review then. So schedule management. So Calendly, for those that don't know, is a great tool that allows you to share a link with someone. And that link opens up a calendar, which shows your availability. So you don't need to, and then the person you send it to can pick a date and time that works for them rather than sending emails back and forth to say, hey, are you free on Thursday at 5? Or are you free on Monday at 2? it's a great tool. There's a lot of competitors for it as well.
Yep.
Is that really would that be the most popular one in schedule management? Not the tool itself, but the type of tool versus ones that are, for example, creating space in your calendar for focus time, because there are certain tools that do that as well. Would you categorize them in the same schedule management in terms of not just scheduling time with other people, but also time for yourself or time for things? I guess it's all in the same grouping, right?
Yeah, it's kind of all in the same grouping. And I mean, even, if you're not using something like Calendly, like you probably have like your digital calendar, like your Google Calendar. But whatever it is, it's the purpose of it is time specific so that you can track your meetings and your schedule. So part of your schedule could be that focus time.
Okay. And then project management, I think, is more straightforward. Yeah, Asana, a very popular one. Notion is a great one too. I use Trello sometimes as well. Doesn't really matter what you use, but the idea is that it allows you to plan things, not schedule things per se, but at least plan things in a certain sequence, at least. Certain dependencies might be between things, knowing what you've accomplished in a particular week. So that's all in that category. And please feel free to jump in if you want to add to it. I'm just going to wrap my head around each of these categories just to get a little more distinct with some of the apps that I'm thinking of, because I don't know, I'm an app guy. Got to think about apps.
And the way to think about this system is the key component is that it's for things that are flexible in timing. So if you have a project, you've got, you're planning a gala, you have several different aspects to it. Not only do you have the timeline of, the sequence of events, but also the to-dos that are on the list. And so it's something that can capture all of it and organize your goals and help you plan for that project.
Got it. So then the third, operations management, that's obviously your CRM, that's your fundraising tool, it's your donor management, it could be your email systems, everything that allows you to do what you need to do in a more automated fashion. I think that's pretty straightforward.
It actually, it can be even more simple. It can be your Google Drive. It can be your Dropbox. It can be where you are housing your information and how you set up your files and how you are organizing all of the different pieces that we have inside of our organizations.
And then the fourth is I would almost see it as a tip of the pyramid, where it just kind of uses everything beneath it to bring everything into focus, allows you, like you said, to take action and see the bigger picture. Where would you though put reporting, if anything? Is how report? Because I've heard a statistic that not many nonprofits use data effectively. They collect data, but they don't really use it. And I kind of see another element to it is the reporting element, where you can start making decisions based on the data that you have. Would you put that under operations, or is that somewhere else? Is it off to the side, or is it something that, as terms of a basic system, you wouldn't really consider to be part of?
I really like that question. I think that these four basic systems are really based on how to better utilize your time. And while, reporting can help you make better decisions, which in turn can allow you to save more time or to better utilize your time, I think that I would actually consider kind of a information management or system management system to be something separate kind of outside of these four systems. Because as I mentioned, there's absolutely additional systems that you might have inside of your organization. Like you might have a grant system or a fundraising system, or and I think that kind of that information reporting is absolutely a system. But these four are your most basic foundational ones.
Got it. And then you mentioned the balance between digital and analog systems. I'm curious to know more about that. How do you, why is it important to balance the two? Why wouldn't you want to go full digital for full analog? Well, I can answer my own question about the full analog part, but why would you want to go full digital at least? And why is that imbalance important at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to the fact that we are humans. So for the analog, my analog pals out there, it is actually really good to have a balance between both. And here's my case for that. So when you write something down by hand, it provides your brain with like valuable motor feedback, which it does a couple of things. So number one, it helps you better remember what it is that you're doing. So better remember the task. Um, then remembering the task allows you to feel this ownership and responsibility for the task. So when you write your to-do list in like a random Excel sheet or like on your notes app, it's much easier to forget and you feel much less personal responsibility for that task. The last one is writing something down by hand actually makes you 40% more likely to complete it. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, so like the actual act of writing something down, I mean, we're like when I was young, I knew the phone numbers of all of my best friends and my grandparents and my dad's office, and I knew all of those phone numbers by heart because I had to write them down. And now, I go in for a medical appointment. They're like, "Who's your who should we contact in case of an emergency?" And I'm having to look up my partner's phone number because I've just stored it, into this digital system, without ever really writing it down. And so this, and this is the rub with like, yes, technology and like these digital platforms and systems have done some incredible things to help us like just reimagine like how we do our work. And yet at the same time, there are still some very like basic fundamental things that we as humans still need to do because it's how our brains work.
So I like the analog perspective, but I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. Right now, there's some really cool tech where you physically are writing, but you're writing on a digital notepad, and that can convert it to text, to actual text as if you had typed it in. Would you say that's a good tool to use or compromise, or would you say you want full analog, you want that pencil on that white piece of paper because that is really what matters, or do you think these kinds of tools that it looks like you're writing. It looks like a pen. It's a digital pen, of course, but it will convert everything you need into a PDF or even to text. What do you think about that?
Using something like a digital pen with a notepad on your tablet or whatever, it still mimics that same kind of idea of writing things down. And I think that it's still maybe not as I don't know the science behind it, but I do think that it kind of has. So I can't like even make that up, but I do think that it still has the same benefits than like typing. So I would agree that like if you're somebody who wants to use something like that, go for it. Absolutely. But it's that mechanical kind of your hand is writing something, which then kind of triggers those neurotransmitters within your brain to start taking those different actions, which you just don't get the same thing when you're typing it out. Now, that being said, there are people with a lot of different abilities. So somebody who maybe doesn't have use of their hands, they might not be able to write something down. And so they have used technology to adapt, and it probably has different benefits for them, which is allowing them to be able to do what they need to do. But in general, just that pen to paper, pen to iPad, that it creates the neurotransmitters, that motor feedback that helps you trigger those actions within your brain.
I agree completely with you in the sense that writing things down, I do find helps me memorize things. Yeah, so I'm with you on the pen on paper type of thing, at least the movement of it, because I find it's very helpful. Even during this podcast, as we're recording, for example, I'm taking notes, things you're saying so that I can follow up on. I'm not typing them on my keyboard, even though I should or could. I'm actually got a little notepad here beside me, and I got my little pen in my hand, and I'm writing my notes because I find it just writing it down helps me remember things, and it's also quieter too. But um, there's something to be said about that pen on paper experience. I just like the idea of the digital ink simply because you can do more with it once you're finished with it versus once it's, if it's a piece of paper and ink, it's hard to convert that to something usable. You might have to retype it and then there's double work and all that kind of good stuff. So there's a balance, obviously, whatever works best for you. And I agree that writing in general works. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's certain, this is one of my favorite questions, is that I love technology. It's awesome. There's so many things you can do on it, with it, everything. But I'm curious to know, if you rely on them too much, is there a concern that they're a crutch that without them you can't, I mean, to your point earlier, when you can't remember your partner's phone number, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Yes, you can store, how many millions of phone numbers in your phone now, but the fact that you can't remember your partner's phone number is a really good example of it's become a type of crutch. Without it, we become less functional. People have the biggest fear now of losing their phones more than anything else before. I think it's even worse than public speaking at this point. So, where is there a balance, or can we achieve a balance between using these systems, using these tools, and yet not relying them to the point where we're not even functional without them?
Yeah. I think with anything, there needs to be balance. And there are so many examples of this. I think, with kids in school now, we're teaching them how to add and subtract and multiply, and they have to do all of that by hand. And also, like, the last time that I really had to do, complicated math by hand, it's been a long time because I'm connected to a calculator on my phone. Can I still do it? Yes, I learned those skills, but I've got a calculator attached to my phone that's with me everywhere. Um, the the way that I try to support organizations, and really my approach, is to find the right systems and the right tech that allow you to get out of the weeds of tech or out of tasks that can be automated, like scheduling a meeting, for example. You talked about kind of that back and forth process, like that can be time consuming. So using a tech that makes it easier for both parties to schedule that meeting, amazing. But also remembering that there are certain processes and systems that actually can't be automated, like building relationships. You know, um, you that kind of thing takes time, and so it's figuring out a balance between the tasks that can be automated that uh, you don't necessarily need to be doing one to one, so that you have time to build those relationships with your donors and create that better retention within your organization, because that takes time. That can't be automated.
I would even add to that, even if it could be automated, should it be automated? Because there's certain things you definitely don't want to automate, even though you could. And I'm thinking about all the AIs that exist these days.
Oh, absolutely. And and I'm a big proponent. Like, there are certain aspects. So, like, email marketing, for example, it's a great tool. Creating a welcome series or new donor welcome series within your email marketing that is automated, and so a new donor comes in, and then automatically they're receiving emails to help kind of bring them uh, into your organization and understand the culture. That is part of building a relationship that small organizations, you can't have a one-to-one relationship with every single donor that's coming into your organization. So being able to have something like an automated welcome series that allows you to start connecting with those donors and start building that relationship, while also at the same time making sure that you're making time for making phone calls and writing notes or sending email notes. It's about finding that balance.
In order to help those systems, or part of, in order to support the systems, we talked about a bit about processes. And to me, when I think about processes, I also think about habits. Like a process is just basically a habit that you've systematized, and that, a habit could be you need to start with a habit to make it into a process. Is how I believe it works. At least remembering the book Atomic Habits. That was really, and I'm just curious to know if you have any tips on when you're building these new systems. Are there any kinds of tips or tricks that you know of that you can recommend to people to say, okay, now that you've got this tool, here is a great way to build that process or build that habit or build the process into a habit? No, build the habit into a process.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think, again, you have to step back and you have to understand why your systems fail. And then what can you do to make sure that they stick? Because obviously you create a system, it's working great, but like you just said, there's a process and there's habits that keep it going. And our systems really fail because of entropy. So when our systems in tech start to decline into chaos, which could mean like, you're not entering donations into your CRM, so you don't have reliable data or information to know like who's donated to your organization or how much you've raised so far, you start to lose trust in the system because there's a lack of predictability and order, right? So if we want to have strong, reliable systems that help us move forward with our goals every single day, we need to avoid that entropy cycle, which is where the habits and routines come in. And researchers have said that it can take anywhere from 18 days to 8 months to build a habit or to start a routine. Whew. I don't know about you, but I don't have that much time. Like, I don't have 8 months to build a habit. So you gotta start small. And I think that one of my best tips, I will fully admit that maintaining, like building habits and consistently sticking with my habits is like actually personally one of the hardest things for me. I had a concussion 2 years ago, and really it wiped out all of my shortcuts that I used to maintain habits. And while I was always productivity focused and I liked building systems, this piece of the habit building has become essential to how I operate every day. And so I think probably the tip that like works the best for me right now is connecting it to habits or routines that I'm already doing, right? So I like my coffee. I like to drink coffee in the morning, but I am not allowed to have my coffee until I have taken my vitamins. Once I take my vitamins, then I'm allowed to start making my coffee. Because if I just go straight to the coffee, I'm definitely not going to do the vitamins. And so, it's picking one thing at a time. But like what I just talked about, that's something called habit stacking, right? So pick something that you're already doing and then add something to it. Like you check your email every day. Well, before you check your email, why don't you write one thank you note? So it's kind of, that's worked for me, but I'd love to know what kind of habits, how you are building habits and routines.
Yeah, I think stacking is a great way to do it, by stacking something you don't like to do with something you already like to do. That definitely helps. For me, it's also just focusing on the goal, is making sure that there's a reason why you want to start this habit and just not forgetting it. I don't know if that's an easy way to do things, but I wouldn't start a habit or try to start a habit if it was something for something that I had no interest in doing, just for the sake of doing. I want to make sure I know why I'm doing it and believe in that cause before I start doing it. And I find that helps me get the extra motivation. Like started running, for example, not that long ago. And running can be very challenging. even if it's twice a week, which is more or less how I do it, and it's only for like 5 kilometers, we're not talking about, miles and miles here. So the idea is that just moving your butt and then understanding, why am I doing this? Well, I'm in front of a computer most of my day. I need to get the blood flowing. I need to exercise. I need to, be in good shape, stay in good health. And this is an easy and very efficient way to do that. So having that mindset of saying, this is the reason why I'm doing it, will help me, especially on the first few steps when you're not so interested in doing it. And then, of course, the passion kicks in. And after the first few 100 meters or so, you start really, or at least I start really enjoying myself. And then it becomes a pleasure all the way through. So the combination, I would say, for me at least, the stacking and the focusing on the goals is how I build and establish and maintain habits.
I love that. Yeah. And it's, different habits and routines are going to be different for everyone, and I think when it comes to routines, one of the wildest outcomes from this concussion was, I used to be a morning person. So I like to, be up early. I would, that's just when my brain liked to function. I could get up. I like to, make my coffee, obviously take my vitamins, but do all of my best work in the morning. And post concussion, I am actually more of an afternoon, late, like into the evening person, which has just flipped all of my routines upside down. So I think something that is important for listeners, to remember, for organizations to remember, is things might change and you might have to make adjustments, and that's totally okay. That is totally okay. Test it out, see what works for you, and continue to perfect that process. Not perfect. That's a word I definitely don't want to use, but continue to build on what you have learned and seen work for you. But don't be afraid to, if you can't go for a run in the morning, it doesn't mean that going for a run in the afternoon is bad.
Awesome. Rachel, there's a lot we can talk about. I want to make sure I respect your time, though. So maybe you can just share with people how they can get in touch with you and the name of your podcast as well, because that's been going on for quite a while. So there's great value there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hang out mostly on Instagram. You can find me at Small Shop Strategies. I also am at Rachel Bearbrower on LinkedIn. So definitely, if you're listening and you're into systems and habits and productivity and all the goodness, come find me on the socials. You can also check out my website, which is smallshopstrategies.com. And I do have the Sprout Nonprofit podcast, which is really helping seed nonprofits for sustainable impact. And it's a blast.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about systems, one of my favorite topics.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's it for today. I'm Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join me again in the next Agents of Nonprofit.